It's been a while since we had an episode of IndieSeen. It's been so long that I've effectively lost my voice, but I'm regaining it. And I appreciate everyone's patience tonight as we welcome once again Sujewa Ekanayake and Raphael Sbarge, the two incredibly talented filmmakers who are collaborating on a special event coming up this week, this Wednesday, in fact, 3 days from today, as you're watching this, or if you're watching this in the future, probably sometime in the past. Hopefully, you got to come out and attend. That is Indie Discovery L.A. Chicago. What is that? It's the Chicago version of Indie Discovery L.A., which was a kind of a, it's not a festival, but it's a film event featuring, in this case, the Chicago screenings, three films: Bristol Fashion, only in theaters, and Cosmic Disco Detective RENE, aka The Secret Society for Slow Romance Part 2, which is coming up this Wednesday starting at 5 p.m. Central at Facets Cinematheque in Chicago. So tickets and all the information will be below, but you should definitely come out because both gentlemen that I'm speaking with tonight are going to be there, as will I. I'm going to be hosting a Q&A post the Only in Theaters screening at 7 o'clock. So tonight we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how Indie Discovery LA came to be. We're going to talk about these three films that we're going to be showing on Wednesday night, and also what it takes to bring an event like this to the people. Talking about independent film distribution, hosting screenings all over the country, and kind of generating awareness and, of course, revenue for these independent film projects. So, first of all, Sujewa and Raphael, how you doing?
Hello.
Doing great. Thanks for doing this, particularly as you're finding your voice again. I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
everyone, wear your scarves. Take your cough drops. It's winter. Wear your masks.
yeah, it's definitely that season in Chicago, but I'm getting better. I'm certainly sounding better than I did a couple hours ago. But anyhow, so in let's talk about Indie Discovery LA, which was sort of the origin point for this. So Joe, we had talked about this before. Well, what I think the genesis of this going back as far as, January, when you kind of conceived the idea of having this showcase in Los Angeles. Talk about how that went, and what inspired you to bring the series to Chicago.
Awesome. Nice to be back on the show. And yeah, thanks for doing the show. Um,
Yeah.
January, I saw at IFC Center in New York Raphael's documentary Only in Theaters, which alerted me to the existence of the Lamley Theaters, which I did not know about previously. So I contacted them. They were friendly towards indie filmmakers, and I contacted them about showing some movies. Then I also put some other filmmakers in touch with the Lamleys. So altogether, multiple, 7 or 8, whatever, week-long runs of different movies. This one filmmaker from UK did 3 week runs at 3 1 week runs at 3 different Lamley theaters all at once. And I introduced him to the Lamleys. Altogether, over 100 shows were done, 100 individual screenings, so like 20 or so per week in some cases, uh, using a number of movies, including Bristol Fashion, which we're showing in Chicago. My movie was launched in together with Indie Discovery LA on VOD in August, and now is showing at Facets at Indie Discovery LA in Chicago, and also Raphael's documentary, second time in Chicago after screening at hundreds of places. So yeah, so that's how this year went. I was able to refer a bunch of movies to Lamleys, play a few movies there myself. Raphael was able to show his movie hundreds of times this year, and now everything's coming together to Chicago, where Ian will be there to do the Q&A for Raphael's movie.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Big year.
So yeah, 2023 has gone by incredibly quickly. I don't know if you guys have experienced the same thing, but it seems like yesterday we are talking about, hey, we got some shows coming up in LA in August, and then all of a sudden it's come and gone, and now we're at the end of the year talking about doing something in Chicago. So what was the, I guess, the reception like to the showing these films in a showcase in Los Angeles? How did that all go?
Good. first movie that we showed was Amir Madla's Three Worlds, but he came down with COVID that week.
Oh,
Uh, but one of his actresses went, took photos. I forget her name at the moment because sometimes not a great organizer for these things, but she has like 50,000 or 100,000 followers on Instagram, and a bunch of people heard about it. So the feedback I've gotten from the LA shows were good. I was going to show my movie, but it wasn't done on time, and I just ran out of time, so we moved it to Chicago. Then the Bristol fashion filmmakers went. They took some photos. They had a good time. A lot of publicity was generated from the shows, blog posts, social media posts, some press. So all in all, it's been a success. I wasn't there personally to exactly, to count how many people showed up, but some people showed up, and the shows happened, and the movies are benefiting. And I can use this moment to talk about the purpose of doing these screenings. So these screenings are useful for future fundraising, grants, donations, and to set up future movies, and primarily to show the VOD customers that, and also VOD, channels and distribution outlets, that the movies existed in the real world in some form before they became, VOD titles. Uh, just like direct to video, a movie seems to do better when it's existed in screenings in the real world before it becomes just a VOD title. So all this stuff is right now for indie filmmakers and distributors tied to making the VOD look good.
That kind of makes sense because there's so much VOD content out there that it's hard to kind of even just focus on
Mhm.
something unless you've got direct word of mouth, or in case I hate to use the word legitimacy, but I'll use it because it's the only thing that springs to mind. But to your point, oh, this was in theaters. This must be something, that people cared enough to put on the big screen somewhere. I'm gonna check. I missed my opportunity there, but I definitely want to check it out on VOD. It's an interesting way of looking at things. I don't know if there's like real psychology or numbers behind it, but it sounds like there would be, because that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's
Is it?
definitely numbers behind it, I think. Also, for the filmmakers, that's the best way to see their own movie.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen my movie on the big screen, and it's been done for months now. So in Chicago, it's the first time I'll get to see it, because it's difficult to get your movie on movie theater type screens for most filmmakers, and even people like Scorsese are complaining now because it's so difficult.
Well, I imagine because we met like 5 years ago when you showed Werewolf Ninja Philosopher. I
Mm,
remember you mentioning that the projection of it at Facets was pretty spectacular. So
One of the
I
best.
imagine you're going to be pretty blown away by the presentation of Cosmic Disco Renee.
I hope so. And Raphael's movie looks really good, also really well done. So all the movies, and also Bristol Fashion looks good. Did you get a chance to see Bristol Fashion?
I watched it today. Yeah.
Awesome. Good cinematography, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the budget was like on that, but it looked amazing. I don't want to give anything away, but there's some scenes on a river that kind of close out the movie that I was like, wow, this is I could paint that water. It was just it was so beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, it was shot really well, and New York photographed it really well, as you see in my movies. Um, but they did a bunch of things that you're not supposed to do: shoot in water, shoot on a boat, shoot with children. Or I think there were some kids nearby or something. Anyway, all the things they say not to do on low budget movies, they did, and somehow got away with it.
Yeah. Um, but okay, I want to kind of loop. I'm trying to form this question as I'm talking through it, which is always a bad idea. But Sujio, you mentioned you weren't able to get out to the LA event that you had kind of dreamed up and put on.
Mhm.
That reminds me of Raphael from your film with Greg and Tish Lemley towards the end of it. And again, I don't want to, for people who haven't seen it yet, I don't want to give too much away, but Only in Theaters is about the Lemley theaters, Greg and Tish Lemley, who kind of are running this family business that runs back to the full history of cinema. At one point, they end up kind of remotely managing a theater from several states away. And it just reminds me that's got to be like kind of a big challenge. So what was your experience with that, Sujewa, as far as trying to put on an event that you're not there to be able to personally oversee?
I think all of us got a lot of training doing things remotely because of the pandemic, unfortunately, and because of texting, social media, phone, voice chat, Zoom, 50 different ways of keeping in touch with people. I was able to, keep up with what was happening to us, to a certain degree. But I would have taken a lot more photos, and it's just a different thing when you're physically at the place. Um,
Yeah.
what I've seen is that a lot of filmmakers, when the event is happening, I think they're too busy with the event. You need someone else to take a bunch of photos, document what's happening so that you can use that for promotional purposes later on. So other than not getting enough photos of the event, I was happy that we were able to pull it off. And always some crazy things go wrong when you're trying to do an event. Some people can't show up. Sometimes films don't show up, and this is not just me. Ted Hope was saying how for a Sundance premiere, he was flying the film print was still wet from the lab, and it was like a couple hours to go. This is for one of his movies, Sundance, like 20 years ago. He had to fly from New York to Park City to show it at the last minute. So these kind of things always happen when you're trying to do a film event.
Well, Raphael, bring it to you officially now. Speaking of film events and doing things in person, talk to me about the experience of showing only in theaters to, I think you've done this like 100 times or more. What's that journey been like, and how has that kind of changed your perception of your own film, if at all?
Right. Well, the film is called Only in Theaters, right? And so the joke that my joke has been that I didn't make a movie called Only in Theaters to be only on streaming. So we really have we committed to kind of making a a run at showing in theaters, as many theaters as we can, because it is a reminder, it's a love letter, it's a call back to action as to why it's worth going to movie theaters, why it's important. Yes, we all appreciate our ability to sit on our couch and bring things to us, but the actual physical real estate that is dedicated to having this movie experience, and again, accent on experience, is what we wanted to kind of speak to. So we've done event programming around the country. We've had runs, sometimes for 4 and 5 week runs in various cities, but we have really done a lot of one nights or 3 nights, or over a week, a smattering of nights that bring people in. And it appears to be kind of where indie film is going. I mean, we know that big films, the Spider-Mans, the Barbenheimers, obviously have reminded people not to do day and date releases. That's been left behind, which is great. We know that some of the biggest movies of all times have happened in the last few years since COVID. So we know that there's a hungry appetite for going to movies. There was a lot of is it the end of movie theaters kind of question that went on. So we know that's not the case. However, it is and I hear this from many places, it is harder to get people to come out to see smaller movies. And so that's big, smaller movies. I mean, even, films like The Holdovers or, May to December, which is a wonderful movie, which I just saw. Both those movies are wonderful. It's harder to get people to come out to see what was considered indie fare and or smaller thinking persons movies. And so from those of us who don't have studios behind us or large, budgets or huge kind of advertising engines, this approach of doing kind of really event screenings, and then I'm there, or the subject of my doc, Greg Lemley, is there, and we've been able to essentially create some momentum and awareness and a squeaky toy for my dog. And basically a lot of ways in which people can find it and connect with it. You know, when Sujewa came to me about this idea of, hey, let's create a festival, let's do something that really sort of uses, you know, not one but three different wonderful movies that have obviously different they're different tastes, different sensibilities, but unique approaches to telling stories. And let's put them together and create sort of an umbrella of cool indie fare that, again, would potentially bring people out, is an opportunity for all of us to talk about it, for us to kind of say like, hey, did you know about this film? Or, you know, Sujewa's film is on VOD, you know, we're on Amazon. However, this is a movie where, you know, the filmmakers get to be there, where, again, you get the event of it and you get to see it as it was intended, which is on a big screen.
Have you, that personal aspect is something that, you know, speaking for me personally, if I know that there's going to be an event screening and it's an event screening because there might be a filmmaker there or, you know, some of the cast or whatever, definitely is more of a motivating factor to go out and put a butt in the seats. Have you done any kind of like A/B testing of, okay, this we're going to be showing only in theaters here, but no one's going to be there in conjunction with the film versus they're going to be at another screening, like maybe the next week in the same city or something? Or are you and the Lemleys like showing up to each of these, you know, either both of you or, you know, singularly? And how does that
we haven't
affect
been able to
the
show up to
experience?
everyone. We've done some Zoom kind of events. We've done some Zoom kind of PR around some of them. I mean, there have been too many and too many places, which is wonderful. You know, on the one hand, I believe that us showing up always helps. I think it also allows us, at least because of the nature of what our specific movie is about, it allows us to kind of turn the conversation back to the local theater. Are you supporting the theater? Is there an opportunity to kind of come out and do something that really promotes? There's my dog who's jumping on me. Little puppy dog. You know, is there an opportunity to be able to kind of do this? You know, this is a movie about a local theater in Los Angeles. You may not know this theater. You may not have even been to Los Angeles. You may hate Los Angeles. However, at the end of the day, it's relevant because we've discovered that the pressures and the complexities and the questions of this family business, albeit a movie theater, speaks to a lot of what's happened in many other cities. And that's what we've sort of capitalized on, is kind of this opportunity to kind of have a conversation, show up, and then talk about what's going on locally. How does your local theater sort of relate to what you're seeing here? And of course, then also the question which has to come up is, what can we do? Because movie theaters are not just important, obviously, for the proprietors of the theater. They're so important for us as filmmakers. They are how we bubble to the top. They are how we break through the noise. And without that, we're just another kind of streaming, you know, link. It's really hard. It's hard to get reviews. It's hard to get press. It's really hard to kind of get noticed. And so doing an event, as you said, Ian, you know, hey, it's in a movie theater, it must be good. That helps us enormously and really helps bring people to the movies.
About your question, for distribution, always better when it's a special event. In my experience, from what I've seen, I've gone to regular screenings by major indie filmmakers happening at big theaters where there's like 5 people, versus a special event where the filmmaker of an unknown film is there and they've contacted their local friends and a bunch of people have shown up. It's like 100 people there, becomes an event, becomes something people can write about, take photos of, take videos of. It's a big deal. Even if only 5 people show up, one of those people might end up becoming a donor for your projects in the future, you know, putting in thousands of dollars, or one of those people could be like a film critic. And I've had both of those things happen where I think I think you and I connected, Ian, because Facets showed my movie in Chicago, and we didn't know about each other prior to that.
Right. That is where we met, and the whole indie scene kind of phenomenon took off.
Yeah, since
Um,
20, I think that was in 2019, so several years ago. So
yeah.
by doing live events and going to them, you can make connections, and you get to meet the people who run the theater, other people, the filmmaker. So yeah, it's always, if you can do it as a filmmaker, if you can go to your event, always much better.
Well, I think it's the one of the reasons I asked the question is, we're talking about independent filmmakers, of course, and distribution and kind of the evolving landscape. It seems to me that indie filmmakers come in all stripes. There's some like micro budget to hey, maybe my family has some money. I got a couple $1,000,000 to make a small feature. But part of the, I guess, promotion, the marketing, just going into the budgeting of the film itself maybe has to be promotion, like travel or planning to go out and put your film in front of people instead of just saying, hey, I can send you a link so you can project it in your art house or whatever. But just to really stand behind the work in a way that, because the marketplace is so crowded, I imagine you might need to have that kind of tall reed syndrome to stand above the rest and say, hey, come check out my movie in the theater with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, special events definitely help with overall distribution and developing your career as a filmmaker. And yeah, Raphael, you must have made some amazing connections this year just by showing your movie the way that you've done it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people who've seen it. I mean, and there's so many people who, reach out to me on social media. Hey, I saw it, or hey, Greg's at the screening and I wasn't there, but I saw the movie. Again, movies are defined by their audience, right? It is the last sort of leg of the stool, right? I mean, it really, these are made not to be kept in secret. It's all about kind of like them finding, taking flight, and so these screenings, these opportunities to connect and talk to other filmmakers and hear what's going on, and look, the wonderful magic of this, me just sitting here, Ian, with you is that Sujewa came to a screening at IFC that I did of this with Greg Lemley, and because of that, we're doing this event in Chicago today. So Sujewa very kindly says that I inspired him. He's done all the work and made it happen. So honestly, I'm grateful for his passion and his sense of kind of where the wind is blowing and how to make this happen. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it. But this is a perfect example of how a spark can happen by two people being in the same space.
And just because I've been tweeting about this event, just last week alone, last 7 days, I've gotten like 50,000 impressions on Twitter on the post that I've done about the movie. So, few thousand people heard about, most likely, the movies. They otherwise would not have heard about it. And, they might connect with the titles down the road when they see it on Amazon, or whatever platform. They'll be like, oh, I saw that. I saw some information about that on Twitter. Let me see what this is all about.
One thing I want to ask about is the venues. Have these been primarily now? I know, Sujewa, you were the Indie Discovery L.A. was the Lemley theaters. Raphael, you've been to hundreds of screenings at this point. Are they mostly kind of, for lack of a better term, mom and pop, like independent theaters, or are you showing any of these at like AMC's or Landmarks or any of the big chains? Or are you really focusing on the independent art houses?
It's really been more the independent art houses. I mean, I was talking to Greg Lemley the other day, and he was saying that the AMC's, some of the larger chains are now showing some of these independent films, and part of that is because there's so little product, right? Because there's been sort of they've been affected by just the ability to have new stuff, and now with the strike, it's going to have there's going to be another kind of a backlog of empty screens. So that's it's good for some filmmakers. May not be great for the indie theaters because they're now competing with the big boys and the giant movie theaters with giant marketing budgets. But I have not played at those larger theaters. We have played primarily at the smaller places, or film festivals, or in some cases, film societies, or I mean, I'm flying to Edmonton next week and I do something with a college there that's really devoted to film studies, and Greg and I and a wonderful film scholar are going. We're going to be in New York on December 2nd. I've got more showings in LA on December 7th through 11th, and on. The wonderful thing is that the film seems to inspire a conversation, and that again it ties to the moment in a way. And we captured a moment because of when we started and what we kind of got into, and the kind of the rabbit hole that we fell down over the 2 years that we were filming. That seems to sort of have been able to. We really is sort of lightning in a bottle as relates to kind of really the larger conversations that are going on about what's happening with film and independent film. The Laemmle Theaters, is known as kind of it's a cultural institution in Los Angeles because they've basically helped create entire careers. They have the French Legion of Honor because of what they did just for the French New Wave, and that's the highest honor that that France will give to someone for their elevation of an art form. That's what this theater has done and committed themselves to. Now, Facets obviously has done that as well, and there are other theaters that around the country, again, that are similarly sort of disposed. The fact is, though, that many theaters have closed. Many theaters are struggling. This independent audience, I think, is been distracted not just by streaming but by TikTok, and also perhaps these independent films are appeal sometimes to an older audience, and that audience has been the slower audience to return after COVID, et cetera. So there's been a lot of different factors, I think, that have played into this. But we as filmmakers, and now as sort of distributing our movies, are looking for ways to kind of try and reach people, and that's why Sujewa's idea of really doing this, which is really create an event and create a like a little mini film festival, and bring people in, and then yell about it as loud as you can, tell as many people as you possibly can reach, and that's why, again, I'm so grateful for you talking to us about this. But this is independent filmmakers are the lifeblood of the next generation of films that get made, and so we depend on the theaters. We depend on the reviewers so that we can actually get those opportunities and the next opportunity to keep doing what we love.
And for movies like this, indie theaters are much better than art house, than giant regular movie theaters. It's the disconnect is going to be vast. Someone walking into one of the giant movie theaters to see one of these things versus Music Box, Facets, Laemmle's. There's a built-in audience. There's a bunch of people who keep track of what's showing there for whatever reason. All around, what Raphael has done with the small art houses is the way to go for indie movies, for real indie movies like ours.
Sure. I mean, the reason I kind of asked was just the kind of the idea of exposure. I mean, that these chains have a national kind of apparatus to get movies in front of people. As you were mentioning, because of the lack of content, given the last, this tumultuous year, they have kind of opened up they might devote a screen or two to something, smaller. Just wondering if that conversation had been had, if there was any opportunity to reach out, or if they're like, no, we're not going to show this. It's weird because, like, I do another series where I talk about Indian cinema, and I've been able to go to my local AMC to watch. They carry Indian films randomly. I mean, for like a couple of weeks, stuff that, you know, I can't find at some of the local like art house theaters here. So it's this really weird dynamic. But then I almost wonder if, not conflict of interest, but if it kind of goes against the purpose of like, why show a film about an independent kind of like David versus, you know, in the arena of Goliath, you know, that kind of a.
Well,
I'm not exactly articulating what I'm getting at, but maybe you understand me.
yeah, well, let me jump in for a minute. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, that all levels of distribution, whether it's art or commercial, the money factor is a major factor, right? So if you're going to put a movie into a regular movie theater, the cost goes up way, the advertising cost, just to justify it, someone will end up having to pay for it. And if it's an indie film going towards a wider release, that cost ultimately gets billed to the filmmakers in the form of the money you owe the distribution company for this, you know, wide release we did and we lost a bunch of money on that. And, you know, then you'll never see that money. You won't see that movie for 20 years, blah, blah, blah. So the trade-off for indie filmmakers, yes, you might get a little bit higher exposure, but you know, you may lose control of your film. And this has happened to many famous indie filmmakers, where they sell their movie at Sundance, it gets bought, it gets sold and resold, companies shut down, they have to do a huge legal battle to try to get the movies back, if at all possible. Some major filmmakers still can get a hold of their first or second, third filmmaker, first or second, third film, because they went the other route. You know, that creates a lot of problems. So unless you have a bunch of money, doing wide distribution through a well-known movie theater chain can become a problem. That's why indie filmmakers prefer smaller art houses.
It sounds almost like the stories of, you know, a rock band gets signed and they get this huge, like, oh, it's a $5 million advance.
Right.
But then they
You have
don't
to
make
pay
any
back
money on
royalties.
their first album because you have to pay back, you know, for the tours and all the hotels and all that stuff. So the record label gets its cut, and then maybe they'll, if they get a second album and it's successful, they might see some return.
Raphael, have you had any
Fascinating.
conversations with other distributors about this kind of a situation? About getting the movie out wider in exchange for this and that?
Getting the movie out wider for, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I
Well,
understand.
something like selling, you know, you selling the movie to another distributor and not having anything else to do with it after that.
Yeah, there was an opportunity that came along at the very beginning that was, we love the movie, we want to take it over, we want to do a theatrical run, and you know, the numbers just get very complicated very quickly. And what happens is, not only are you essentially handing away your movie and giving it, you know, basically the blood, sweat, and tears of your effort and everything, putting it, you know, giving someone the steering wheel and saying, well, you know best. Not only that, but you're also essentially giving them the opportunity to kind of figure out how to monetize it, which I understand, but there are so many there's so many fees that get worked into how, you know, how they structure it, so that I was told by the end of it, if I accepted the deal, I would never see I would see nothing. And so the film might get out, but it was, they are inherently structured to make it impossible for the filmmaker to make any money. Now, I'm in the process of still recouping my money and then also paying back my investors, which is very important to me. I'm not fully whole yet. I'm still kind of in that process, but I don't have a lot of other additional costs that I have to sort of add on to this process. And I'm sort of grateful for that. Is it a lot of work? Yes. Has it been hard at times? Incredibly so. Does it require enormous stamina? what Sujewa does on Twitter alone is an example of an astounding commitment and just sort of profound sense of stamina that is required to kind of keep it going. But that is, of course, also kind of the hallmark of being an independent filmmaker as well. It's like, no, I want to do this. I want to make this. I've got a passion for it, and I want to see it through. The distribution is a giant part of this process. Giant. It's, you have to be able to make a wonderful movie and finish it and have it work on so many levels, and work within a time frame and really incorporate all these other artists who can work with you. But then you got to figure out a way to get people to know about it. And it's not a small part of this. It really can be everything. If we know how many great movies are there that people haven't seen. So it's huge. It's a third of the movie, I would say, is the distribution process. Mm-hmm. And that's everything. That's the fundraising, that's the actual prep, that's the script, that's the filming, that's the edit, that's post, and everything, color correction, sound, music. And then you have a third more of the movie, which is essentially sort of getting it out. And so it's not a small thing.
I mean, it sounds like, yeah, I mean, you go through all of that. You, of course, want to maintain the control over it, not only just financially, but, why give someone else the opportunity to essentially own it and never, help you recover financially from it? I mean, given what you had just said, I don't understand why anyone would take that, a lousy distribution deal, except for maybe the idea of exposure. But what does that even mean in the long run?
Self-distribution, what me and Raphael are doing, is a tremendous amount of work, and it's not for everyone. So I can understand the filmmakers who don't want to do anything like that and just want to sell it. But those movies disappear because no one really cares for your movie unless the distribution company that bought the movie is making a ton of money. Then they're going to put a lot of money into it and work into it. They'll create a separate division just to make as much money as possible from that movie. But for most movies, 99% of the movies, they buy it, they try to sell it at a profit. It maybe happens or doesn't. It gets bundled with 100 other movies. They try to sell it as a library, blah, blah, blah. So basically, your movie disappears. There's been a couple of other movies that I've discovered that kind of are somewhat similar to what Raphael's movie does, focus on an entity that's important for indie or art house movies, but those movies don't have 10% of the press coverage and sort of the awareness that Raphael's movie has, because Raphael has spent a year or two promoting it himself and just going after it, all opportunities. So that's the difference. So you may get a little bit of money or not, but it'll be off your hands and you can go do something else, versus you can keep your movie alive, and that'll lead you to new connections and you can make some money back, et cetera, at the cost of having to do a lot of work. Those are the options.
With all this going on, how do you have room, and this is for both of you, to continuing pursuing creative endeavors? Like, do you have your next film mapped out? Are you working on it? Is there room to develop that idea while you're busy trying to promote and do all this other stuff in service of something that you completed, 2 years ago?
Well, Raphael's a famous movie star, so he's set.
Last year was a little intense because I was distributing the movie. I was in The Exorcist, which was shooting in Atlanta, and then I was also I shot and then edited and then delivered so I shot it with an air date, a 4-part docuseries to PBS. So I was doing all of that, and honestly, it was, and then I was also producing content for another company. So it was too much, and honestly, I got really kind of burnt out. Honestly, at some point, it just was like, the strike happened for me as an actor. I made some sort of personal commitments. I got married. I got, decided to sort of slow down a little bit and try and smell the roses. I do have several other projects that are brewing, which are great. But the thing about overwork is at some point there is a, to every action there is an equal enough reaction. So I had to take some downtime, and I the strike for me had some upsides, which was just to try and recoup, sort of take stock of myself again and try and slow down. But that said, there is a sort of a slow burn on this at this point, where we're continuing to kind of find opportunities. And again, I guess I would go so far as to say maybe there's not a wrong way. If you make a movie and you have a network, you hand it to the network and they do the work. If you have a studio and you've made the movie for the studio and they're invested in all of this, you again have that muscle to be able to kind of get it up and out. You lose some control, you lose some creative control in the advertising and in terms of the marketing, in terms of the trailers, in terms of everything else, but you get it up and out. That's a wonderful thing. But you have to kind of live with kind of how they decide, when it gets released, how it gets released, what the messaging is, what they're focusing on, etc. This is another lane, and this lane is really, again, born of independent films, where you get to kind of, craft your way forward. And a lot of times it feels like, you're feeling around in the dark for your keys, you don't really, the keys are in there, you got to find them. But I am, for me anyway, this particular film, because of what it's about and what it means and what it's inspired and the conversations that it's kind of really opened up. I've been so grateful to have an opportunity to be able to kind of really go kind of hand-to-hand combat and really continue to kind of really make these opportunities possible, because I there's a cause that sort of bubbled up out of the making of this movie that really speaks to something that I think is important and is of the moment. And so I've taken great joy and pride in being able to kind of really kind of carry that. But it's a lot of work. It's clearly not for everyone.
Well, let me add one thing, that even though it's a tremendous amount of work, to be an artist / indie filmmaker is a great privilege. Only a tiny fraction of humanity ever gets to make movies, and we are a part of that. So yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work, but my whole life is built around making and releasing indie movies. So everything I do, going to Chicago, that's probably going to be a movie in the future. Indie filmmaker goes to show a movie in Chicago, runs into a space alien or something like that. So meeting people, fundraising, it's all one thing. Day jobs that fund film work. So I find it both a great privilege and exciting. I mean, you got to do something, right? If not this, then I'll be working at some office job and complaining about things. So, so being a filmmaker, traveling to Chicago, meeting film critics, meeting other filmmakers, having to do all the crazy things that are required is a part of the job. So I dig it, but it is a lot of work. And anyone who's going to get into it, they should study up on it and know that it is a tremendous amount of work.
Right. I mean, it seems the artistic, the creative process of it, the actual making of the movie is I think as maybe you put it, Raphael, it's like a third essentially of this overall, 3/3 process. Actually, because Sujewa, you mentioned, this could be a movie in itself.
Sure.
Raphael, in what you've been doing as far as traveling with only in theaters, having these conversations, in the aftermath of the landscape, this sort of setup at the end of only in theaters, coming out of COVID. I mean, as we mentioned in our discussion a few months ago, this isn't specifically a COVID movie, but COVID was a part of the film. And it's also on the backs of what the movie was initially about, which is sort of like streaming and the changing landscape of audiences and independent theater attendance and overall theater attendance kind of going down for various reasons. you're out there, meeting people, hustling, kind of surveying the landscape as it is now. Are you taking note of this? Are you maybe filming stuff for a follow-up, or are these ideas kind of just taking in your head? Or are you feeling, well, once this chapter is over, whatever that means for you, I'm going to move on to a beekeeping documentary or something, something like that?
Yeah, I'm not doing a follow-up. I'm not planning a follow-up movie. It's been an interesting process. I mean, and several people have sort of asked about, do you do the kind of the, where are they now kind of version of this. I just had one of the theaters that I'm doing a screening of in New York, the New Plaza. The fellow there specifically asked for me to do an interview with Greg about, where is he now? Where's the theater now? What's and what's his sense of where things are? The great news for Greg is that, and the Laemmle theaters, is that they're in the black again, and that they've been able to kind of find their balance. There's still some things that are outstanding, and a lot of challenges, and a lot of it's the famous, there's known knowns and known unknowns, and then unknown unknowns, so there's things out there that they're still navigating, but they have found their way back. His contention is that the whole, it's streaming over film, going to theaters. He thinks that's clickbait. He said that's just, it's not even relevant. We've seen these crazy numbers. And people like going to movie theaters. It's not, it has not replaced streaming. Now, has it affected it? Yes. But again, his opinion is that it's a sort of it's a combination of things. And part of it also is just sort of getting people, people falling out of the habit. But there's also this issue of, a lot of films deciding to go the streaming route, the smaller films. On the other hand, the great news is that, Apple and even Netflix have committed to doing theatrical runs. And the day and date thing, which killed so many movies, when they experimented with that, literally left money on the floor as far as I'm concerned. Everyone's abandoned that. Like, that was a terrible idea. We're not going to do that. There is this thing that happened with Freddie that was an anomaly, but I think it's the exception that proves the rule, because it obviously was day and date and also then broke records. But I think the feeling is that movie theaters are here to stay, that they're not going anywhere. But there is some adaptation that has to happen, and what that exactly is, I think we're still trying to figure that out.
Well, one thing we haven't really talked about, we've talked about theatrical, we've talked about streaming, but we haven't really touched on that kind of missing link of physical media. Yes, it still exists. And in fact, only in theaters. What do I have here? I have a DVD from Kino Lorber of Only in Theaters, which...
Send me one of those, Raphael. Signed.
Yeah.
Well, this, one of the great things about physical media that you don't get with streaming or theatrical is the extra feature. I'm happy to see that there's some bonus content on this disc. And this is I'm going to ask you about this in the Q&A. So this is even more reason for people to show up on Wednesday for the Only in Theaters screening and Q&A. There's an alternate opening sequence that you shot for this film that you went a different direction, and I'm very curious to kind of get some insight into that. But in addition to that, there's an audio commentary. There's extended interviews with some of the subjects in the film. So what is your thought on that kind of, as I say, like kind of the missing link aspect of the film watching experience of physical media? Is that on its way out as well? Is there a world in which some of these extra features might be included as bonus content on a streaming rental or purchase? I don't know why that hasn't really taken hold, but it seems like a natural progression.
That's a great idea, actually. That's a Kino Lorber idea. The physical media thing is really interesting right now, because we are seeing large studios like Warner Brothers and others delete entire movies to take essentially tax breaks, and or and no one, these movies are poof, gone forever. There is no physical record of them.
Yeah, that's another downside of selling your movie. They might delete it.
I guess that
Yeah.
is true. Having a disc, like having DVDs. I remember all that, like, the DVD. I still have my DVDs. People were like, don't get rid of your DVDs. There is something wonderful about having the physical media. Obviously, I see by the shelf behind you, I'm preaching to the choir, I'm absolutely, I believe that there's something, not just tactile, but wonderful. And it gives us an opportunity for more depth. I mean, all the stuff that we were able to put on that disc, it's super cool. And stuff, it's so hard when you're cutting a movie, and there's wonderful things, wonderful people we spoke to, and we couldn't include them, the depth of what they said, and it gives us an opportunity to do that. So I love the Kino Lorber. They love this movie. They've said how much important it is to them, how it speaks to what they believe in movies, why they do what they do, and they were able to get wonderful kind of press and coverage, and reached out to a lot of people. And my hope is that people will find it. By the way, let me announce this here. Probably this is late to the party, but I'm going to bring two DVDs to Chicago. And we will have a kind of for people that come, we'll give them away to two lucky people who are there. So we should probably promote that too.
Yeah.
But I'll bring two DVDs courtesy of Kino Lorber, and sign them for a couple of people who are there. Again, I'm so grateful that the disc exists, and I think it's just wonderful that Kino knows that that marketplace, and knows that there are people who still really want to keep them in their libraries.
Yeah, eventually I'll do a Blu-ray and DVD for RENE movie, and possibly a lot of the earlier movies. And the one thing I wanted to add quickly was that there is a path in the future where art houses and indie filmmakers collaborate to put on these events as a regular thing, similar to what indie rock bands and rock clubs have done for decades now. Without the distributors and without going through a festival, it's possible. It could be a good thing that works out for everyone.
Well, I think the cool thing about Facets in particular, the Music Box also does this, but the Facets to a much greater degree, is they have, you can buy independent films, in the theaters on physical media, from those distributors. Music Box has its own kind of division, and Facets has, deals with other distributors, I guess. But yeah, being able to have like a marketplace in addition to the place where you go to see the movie, so you can discover other titles that you might fall in love with, or pick up a physical copy of something that you caught, at the screening. Like, how do I get a hold of this? Well, it's right here. I think that's very important, because the other thing is, some of these films that don't get proper distribution, if they can get, I guess digital distribution, if they can get a physical copy out there, that's all the better, because people can take it home, they can share it with their friends, they can have a party at their house and show this cool indie film, and have everybody talk about it and kind of spread things organically. Because the movies, our movies dead discussion, we were having that at the beginning of the pandemic, and the conversation kind of ebbed and flowed, and 2023 proved that there is always going to be a demand for the in-theater experience. We had Barbenheimer, we had the huge Taylor Swift concert movie experience, where people were literally dancing in the aisles, which is one of the reasons I avoided going to see that film. But it's just a matter of, I guess, kind of creating that groundswell for the independent scene. I think that would be amazing if this kind of thing caught on. And maybe with 2024, as we've mentioned here before, with the strikes and everything, there's going to be possibly some dead patches, some opportunity for smaller films to catch that zeitgeist and get people saying, I'm going to go see something in a movie theater, You know, the AMC is there's moths flying through it, but my local art house has something really cool in there, so I'm going to swing by and check it out and bring my friends. That's my hope anyway. And my hope also is that everybody watching this or listening to it comes out to Facets on Wednesday night and meets all of us, and you find people and sees a trio of really, as was mentioned here before, really diverse, really, you know, different films in all different styles. I mean, Bristol Fashion is as different from Only in Theaters as different from Cosmic Disco, Detective RENE. You could say it's the ultimate, you know, indie art house experience, but they're not the same kind of, you know, film. You're not going to sit there and for 6 hours and say, oh, I just saw the same film 3 times.
Right.
You're going to see 3 distinct visions of independent cinema, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be a great event. Come out, filmmakers and film fans. A great event to come out to. Meet filmmakers, the director, and possibly the cinematographer of Bristol Fashion will be there also. And Charles Coleman, programmer at Facets, said he's going to try to join and come to the event. And so Ian will be there, plus some other friends from Chicago Film World will be there. Regardless of how many people show up, we will have a great time, and it'll be good. Especially if you're a filmmaker, come out, meet people, make the connections that you need.
Definitely. Raphael, any closing words before we kind of wrap up?
No, just how much I appreciate what you do, Ian, and just your commitment and your voice and just how valuable it is and how meaningful it is to us. You know, you're impacting not just the people that make the movies, the people that find the movies, and your taste and your sensibility is just so grateful for you being there. So thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you for giving me great stuff to talk about and to promote and share with people. But yeah, again, I'm going to have links to all of this stuff down below, the Facets ticket information, you know, the showtimes, the link to the Only in Theaters Blu-ray, the DVD. It's not on Blu-ray. What's up with that? Why not the high definition, Raphael?
You know, that was above my pay grade in this case. So we went with the DVD. So.
And doesn't mean in the future they can't do a Blu-ray.
100%.
There you go. No, just skip Blu-ray. Go straight to 4K. I want to see Greg Lemley in 4K. Greg and Tish.
Raphael, quick question: have you tried to get this movie nominated for an Oscar, or is it too late?
We did our sort of swing at that ball again. You know, the issue is you know, just so hard because I don't have the marketing budget of a Nat Geo or a or a Netflix. You know, it really is. It's so competitive, and a lot of people came, a lot of people saw it. You know, a lot of people got screeners, and we did our push. I'm very proud of the film and what it spoke to, and I'm proud that Greg Lemley, thinks it's a good movie because Greg is at times a man of few words and is, had no artistic control in this, but ultimately, said how much it meant to him and what a wonderful movie it is. That's just huge praise. So I'm grateful for that. But I will continue to sort of push to have the movie come up and pop up in other theaters and really look forward to being at Facets because it's such a great theater. But I also, there'll be other opportunities around the country.
It's an Oscar quality movie. Come see it at Facets. There
you go. All right. Again, links and all that good stuff will be down in the description below. Hope to see everybody there on Wednesday night. Gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging out, for talking about this awesome Indie Discovery L.A. Chicago event that's coming up, and also the insights into independent filmmaking and distribution. It's always a good time talking to you guys. Everybody out there, if you like this show, please make your plans to come see us on Wednesday. Also like and subscribe and support Sujewa and also Raphael. Links to their stuff will also be, it's going to be a packed description down below is what I'm saying. Lots of links to Palooza. Right. But yeah, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks very much for watching Kicking the Seat, and take care.